Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon. It's about noon and just a little bit past noon in Singapore, and I'm bringing you my patch 8.15 patch note rundown. I'm doing this because I don't want it to be too late, and to be honest, I know a lot of people look forward to this, so I'm interested to see what I can see from this patch notes, and I want to tell you guys what I'm seeing as well. The one thing I want to cover before I go over anything else is the fact that I know that there was a video released recently on my channel that talked about how I didn't like the current meta and the state of the game. I will be judging these changes based on the current meta, as opposed to judging on some hypothetical fantasy meta that I would prefer. I think that generally what happens is most of the patch notes I have something I'm looking at in terms of like what I want to be changed in the immediate future, and I'm not going to focus too much on like long-term changes, because I think especially going to Worlds on the current patch, we're not going to be in a situation where we can change too much, and that's the expectation going forward. So without further ado, going to these patch notes, I would like to look and hopefully find some Aatrox or Zoe nerfs. I think both those champions are relatively overtuned, and I'd like to see some nerfs to be able to counteract them. Aside from that, I'm open to any kind of buffs to weaker champions and kind of any changes in general. I did state that there was a little bit too much damage in the game, but I don't really think any of the inherent systems are going to change. So I will just kind of want to see and evaluate how this patch works, and we'll kind of be open to see what happens. Okay, let's move down. Champions, the new Akali just came out. My general thoughts about the new Akali, since I'm not going to do an individual Akali rundown, is just that I think the new Akali is really cool. I love everything that Certainty did with the new Akali. However, I do want to say that there's a good chance that the W will lead to the balance problems, like a lot of balance problems. And I think that if they can fix her numbers and her kit around that, she will be not only a cool champion in the game, she'll also be a champion that like I'm really looking forward to both playing and playing against. Unfortunately, a lot of his champions are hard to balance, so that's going to be on Riot's end to be able to work out well. I do think, though, that the rework looks great, and I like a lot of what he did with it. So let's move on. Fiddlesticks. So Fiddlesticks is a really high poke-oriented champion in the bottom lane. I think he's one of the best current champions right now, and abuses the Keystone Aftershock a ton to be able to kind of negate his squishiness, as well as have extremely high poke at the same time, and the ability to shut down single target damage, and have good AoE CC initiation. So he's kind of got a wide variety of things going for him. So what is he going to do? So they nerfed the mana cost on E and the base damage per hit. Okay, this is just nerfing his poke in lane. I think right now Fiddleheimer is one of the most OP lane combinations, and typically any Fiddle lane, especially with how E bounces to just about any target nearby, if he throws in the creep wave, you're going to get hit. So I think that it's something which you kind of need to nerf a little bit. I do agree with these nerfs. I think that it is necessary, and I'm glad to see them. Fizz. The day the Fizz W changes happened, I put in 5 games of Fizz. And at the end of the 5 games, I thought that he was heavily nerfed. So I'm hoping to see, and I'm reading right now that there's more W damage put in the game. I think that's a really good take on it. I am a little bit scared that they're buffing the base damage. I would prefer to buff the AP ratio, because I think that it's something where you don't want Bruiser Fizz to come back. Ideally, the changes are there to make sure AP Fizz does really well without having the really stupid Bruiser Fizz come back that was really frustrating to play against. I do, however, have one note in the sense that this Chum the Waters change, especially on initial guppy damage, is insane. I think right now the idea of having to, Chum and throw the shark from farther range to reward you more damage for it is a good idea. However, increasing the AP ratio from 0.6 to 0.9 at point blank just disencourages Fizz from doing anything but a point blank ulti for the most part. And I think that that's wrong. Like, I think that 0.9 is probably too high, to be honest, and it should be rewarded like a lot lower, because hitting a point blank fish is much easier than hitting one that's even medium range, for instance. But I do like to see the W buffs. I think he needed it, and I think that he's in a decent position right now, I think, after these buffs, to do some damage. Aurelia. So this is kind of an interesting champion. I don't think she's that weak. She's in a situation where, like, yeah, she has a lot of counter picks, but if you make her work, she snowballs like crazy and has great mid-late game potential. So what do? They increased attack damage, increased health, increased passive damage, increased Q range, base damage and Q ratio decreased, E range and base damage decreased, R range decreased. We're shifting more of her power out of her abilities into her basic auto attacks. They're making it so that Q spamming isn't as effective as before. Counteract this, they're giving her more base stats in lane. Sure, I think that's fine. They're lowering their range by only 25. That's not that big of a deal. Lowering range by 5 and damage rated by 0.1. That's pretty big, especially because you'll get anywhere between 2 blade surges to 4. Okay, and Defiant Dance is flat damage reduction over time. I think that's kind of a weird way to take Defiant Dance. I think Defiant Dance should be something where the longer you channel, you shouldn't get full damage reduction up front. It should be the longer you channel, the more damage reduction you get. Something like that. But I do think any kind of nerf to W is good because I don't think she should be getting such good defensive utility, especially on the ability she maxes second. And her last thing is the range nerf on E is going to be pretty big. Damage doesn't really matter. No longer deals 50 damage to monsters. So if you do end up maxing it early, you can use it to wave clear. Okay, and the range for ulti down 50 doesn't really matter. Generally, it looks like it is a buff to her auto attack passive, and no overall, I think she'll be completely fine. Like I think that there's nothing changes from the current version of Aurelia to this Aurelia after the changes. Sure, there's more power in auto attacks, and the best Aurelias will probably get a lot of autos, especially in skirmish situations and not team fight situations. So more likely she'll become like a slightly better split pusher and like slightly worse team fighter. And I think that's fine, not a big deal. She's still pretty good right now. Kindred, well, they buffed this champion 4 times in a row, and so really there's nothing that I expected except for her to be super powerful, especially because she was already borderline contesting Graves 2 buffs in. And I think that rather than waiting for data to come in, Riot just kept buffing her. I think this is very different from Lux, where they buff Lux 4 times in a row, and she's just above average or average champion. Kindred is at a point where like any kind of ranged jungler is going to be problematic for the game, because unless you have multiple gap closers, they can always kite you and do a lot of damage, especially with red buff. And so what about Kindred makes her... What did they do with it? The attack speed scaling got decreased by 50%. Holy moly, okay. I agree with probably any nerfs to Kindred. I think she's too good, and her ulti cooldown got nerfed. Great. I think that she does need some nerfs. She's very powerful right now, and I like the way they're headed with this. Lee Sin, so Q base damage decreased, Q damage ratio increased. Aggressive snowball oriented champion. We want to make sure he's appropriately rewarded when he does get ahead. So what they removed the execute damage and increased the new execute damage for your damage based on targets missing HP. Generally, what this means that aside from in almost any situation, assuming you're building AD, that I saw a chart for it. Pretty much on any champion that's below 15% health or is missing like 20% of their health, you'll be doing more damage with Q for the most part. Generally, just an overall buff for Lee Sin. Great, and I think that that's super good. I like it. There are some situations where this is going to be a nerf, but for the most part, overall, this is a buff to Lee Sin, and I really like that. And it rewards you for building 80, so also really good. Morgana, base mana regen decreased. Whew. Dude, I talked about this initially when they changed the mana regen. Just randomly gave more like the highest mana regen in the game, and she was also already top tier. She's even more top tier now, being played in the mid and the AD roles here and there. And can be played support. So nerfing our base mana regen early and increasing the mana of Black Shield, probably a really good thing. I just think it's really funny they reverted the mana cost decrease, where I don't think she should have had that in the first place. Anyways, good nerfs to her. She is still going to be very powerful, but I think especially like she should have to watch her mana. That should be the baseline. And with these 2 changes, she will have to actually look at her mana more and more. Olaf, W. Attack speed increased. He's a little bit weak right now. He gets 55% attack speed at level 1. I'm assuming if he's low. Cool. I think Olaf is pretty weak right now, especially when you have champions like Graves and Kindred in the meta. And so he needs any buffs he can get. I don't think he's too OP at crowding out other junglers. I like it. Quinn, I think that she's very strong right now. Like super powerful. What's happening here? Armor decreased, passive damage decreased. Yeah, so generally I think that Quinn is really strong in the meta, which she can get out of lane really easily, because the laning phase isn't super punishing at the moment, and she's really flexible in multiple different lanes and multiple different roles. I think with the consistency before that she added of being able to just spam or like just to get multiple passive procs, they needed to nerf the damage in some way, shape, or form because she was getting way too consistent damage in and too short of a span. To the point where like I'm getting, you know, auto off the ulti, which procs Harrier, into the E that procs the second Harrier, and I'm losing like my entire health bar. And I don't think it should be that easy for her to be able to do that. So a couple damage nerfs here, I think, and a little bit of armor nerfs. She's gonna be weaker, still gonna be pretty good. Syndra, Q damage increased. This is interesting. They buffed her Q damage by so much level 1, and 2 to be able to give her more bullying power. I think that she's not even a bad champion. She's seen a lot of play in the LCS right now, and from Demonte and Bjergsen, and I think that she's still pretty good. She has a good skill matchup in the Zoe, and that she's flexible for. She's easily initiated on and immobile, but still provides really strong CC and a single target burst. So I think it's really interesting that, hey, you know, they're looking to buff her. I think she could use a little bit of buffs, but let's not give her too much, in my opinion. I think this is okay. Don't give her any more. Thresh, W cooldown decrease at later ranks, E maximum damage contribution increase at early ranks. Yeah, Thresh sucks right now. I think generally all the Thresh players end up playing Pyke because I think Pyke is too good, and Pyke is just like an easier, safer version of Thresh, and without the Dark Passage. And so what's happening right now is they're buffing Thresh. They're making his Dark Passage go down 4 seconds at max rank, and his E AD damage contribution goes up early. And you know what? I'm fine with both of those. I think Thresh does need some love. Very hard champion to play, especially in the meta that has like champions that Thresh really does poorly into, such as Morgana, such as I would say pretty much like Alistar. Don't think Thresh typically does that well into Rakan. It does okay into Rakan, and only does well into Soraka if he can get the all in early, right? So moving on to support items, the current cost of support items lets support players mitigate a high amount of damage poke through potions to make training field more ineffective than we'd like. So what are they doing? They're making it so that you can get less gold, less pots early. You can only buy 2 starting potions as support. I think that's a huge change for bot lane. I think it's going to have bot laners like feel trades more, supports especially. And I think, you know what? That's a good thing. I actually do encourage there to be more fighting and forcing of people to go back. I like this a lot. Marksman and itemization. Our goal of making Marksman a later spike was a bit too hard. Left Marksman feeling underwhelming in the mid game and often unable to reach their late game item spike. We're decreasing the cost of Marksman items so they spike earlier, but cutting some of their later power. Okay, let's talk about Marksman itemization. So let me go see what they're doing. They're probably going to be buffing a couple item. Yeah, cool. So the biggest problem with Marksman itemization right now, I think a lot of the build path is like this. You always build Storm Razors first, and you build crit item, and you build IE. That's pretty much a lot across the board the best way to do it. And so what happened was a lot of people complained that AD carriers don't spike early enough. So what Riot did and how AD itemization actually spikes is Storm Razor is incredibly strong buy, like borderline like overpowered for what you get from the item. And what ends up happening is that they have a small spike on the Zeal item and they have a large spike on IE. So right now there's a large spike on Storm Razor, small spike on the second item, and large spike on the IE. And I think that there's maybe too much power in the first item spike, and generally I would like to see like the AD power curve like kind of creep up, you know, and then go exponential after. But like what ends up happening is it just creeps like average creep and then straight up as soon as you get the Storm Razor, and then kind of goes back down, then goes straight up once you get the IE. And so it's a little bit worrisome because I think that potentially Storm Razor is just too good of an item, and rather than trying to smooth out the power curve of AD itemization, all they're doing is they're just making it more of what I just said. Like, and now definitively right now, this is the best spike. Like this spike is going to be sick, and this is a small spike, and this spike is going to be sick. And I think that what I saw at a glance doesn't necessarily change that, and that's kind of what I'm worried about. So let's go look at this. IE, total cost decreased, build path changed, true damage decreased, attack damage decreased. So the total cost decrease is always good. True damage conversion 10%, 80 10%. Cheaper items should make them hit their spike faster. I agree with this. I think that generally the games are ending very quickly, and unless they like buff Baron, there's no reason for there to be for AD carries to care about an expensive IE when they can get it cheaper. Hard agree. Storm Razor, cost decreased, AD decreased, AS decreased. Cheaper items with fewer stats to compensate should help Marksman reach a reasonable spike earlier. I am a little worried about this because it's a 400 for 400 gold. Would you lose 10 AD and 5% attack speed? Huh. Longsword is 350, so it's slightly worse, but you get it earlier. I think the passive is worth it, and I think that this does nothing but re-highlight the problem I have with the spike. It's like, yes, Storm Rays are super good, and you're just getting it faster. And I think I honestly think that ADs have too many problems with this situation. I just wish the problem is getting this item. I wish that the spike or kind of the gradual increase in AD power spikes was more of a kind of smooth line as opposed to large jumps in damage spikes. Because right now when I'm playing against ADs, it feels like Storm Razor's humongous spike they do a ton of damage on this, and then the IE is a ton of damage, and the second item is kind of meh, to be honest. Essence Reaver, 5 AD more, cool. That's nice, I guess. And both the Zeal items got decreased by 100 gold. Of course, that's going to be good regardless. It's nice. And Scimitar got decreased in gold and decreased in AD. To be honest, like, obviously worse than 6 itemization. And Scimitar, you're probably getting around 4th or 5th. But generally, I think right now you should not be looking towards 6 item completions on any game. I think I complete 6 items in one of 30 games. And so the cheaper stuff is, even if you're giving up stats for it, probably better because the item efficiency when finishing a full item is worth it. So ADs just look like they got buffed across the board, and my problem with them spiking at certain points didn't change at all. Probably got highlighted a little bit more. Jungle items. Monster Hunter restrictions now applies to champions the highest minion score, not the most gold. Okay. Only restrict the minion score in your team. Lane minions will grant you. Oh, so so this probably won't happen to the jungler unless you're just stomping the game. I like this a lot more. Like, I think it helps champions like, you know, Shaco and Lee Sin who rush Tiamat to not get affected by the jungle itemization if they're like even a kill ahead. And so this hurts junglers, like pure junglers, a lot more than Funnel, which is what this originally was built to kill. Runes, perfect timing. We pushed the activation to 10 minutes because its prevalence in professional play was delaying or inhibiting early action. We tried to lower the value, but we've been observing the same impact in pro play. We're reverting those changes. I would have been okay for 9 minutes. I think 8 minutes is okay, but sure, maybe they thought that 8 minutes was too much. I don't have much. I think it's okay. I think boots are going to be a more like better option now, and I would have been, or a better option than it was before. Obviously, with this nerf, I would have been okay if they had nerfed it to 9. I think that's a fine middle ground, but I guess I'm just saying that because it's the middle number, right? I kind of liked it at 8, but 10 is, I guess, okay. It's still going to be pretty good. Chromos, I don't care. Store and gifting, I don't care. Stats, don't really care. Bug fixes, I don't really care. These skins, cool. I like the pull party Caitlyn, that looks sick. Some chromas that have no relevance in the game, so I don't really care. Generally, they buffed create ADs a little bit more. I generally like the overall buffs. I think the support item cost changes are going to help a lot. I think supports get away with a lot through health pots, and they shouldn't be able to. Like, laning phase should matter more. I like the nerfs on the Quinn. I don't see Zoe or Aatrox nerfs, which I'm really surprised about. I don't know why that wasn't there. But I like Morgana nerfs. I like Lee Sin buffs. I like the Quinn nerfs. I like the Kindred nerfs. And I like the Fizz buffs and the Fiddle nerfs. So generally, good patch. I was looking for a little bit more, but I'm hoping that, especially next patch, they cover at least those 2 really problematic champions. I think they did overall a good job on this patch and smoothed out the inelegant solution of jungle funneling from the patch before. Okay, I think that I like it. I would have liked to see a little bit more, but I think I say that about most patches. So generally, pretty good patch in my book. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys when I get back from Singapore.